link cost the Cubs in their opportunity to sign free agent Japanese star Roki Sasaki. And why would it matter that it got out when the Cubs were going to meet with him? Brennen Davis signs with the Yankees. My thoughts on Brennen Davis. And our friend Jesse Rogers put a story out where an agent took a shot at the Cubs offseason. Going to get into all these today. Hope you had a great Christmas. Happy Hanukkah. Happy holidays. Let's get this show started, guys. I think there's so much to talk about today. You thought it was a slow news day, but we found a lot to get into. Go Cubs. Let's get the show started. Hey, everybody, Mick Gillespie here on the Cubs Baseball Channel, and I'm telling you, it is a pleasure to talk to you guys today. Hopefully you had a fantastic Christmas and a great holiday season. Here we are, day after Christmas, and who's working on Christmas? Well, we did, and we're working the next day. And I told you, we're going to work through this entire holiday. We're just going to try to. So the only thing we want from you guys is like, subscribe, thumbs up, share with your Cubs friends, and let's talk some Cubs baseball. All right. I found this really interesting. A communication link, would it have an impact on signing Roki Sasaki? Okay, Roki Sasaki, as you guys know, is the superstar from Japan. He's not old enough right now to be a full free agent, right? And because of the collective bargaining agreement, he can only make up to $7.5 million. And so everybody wants him. I mean, who the hell wouldn't want to pay this guy $7.5 million? It would be one of the best signings that any organization could have if they're able to get him. And you got to work through the Dodgers with Ohtani, with Yamamoto. You got to work through the Padres with Yu Darvish, former Cub. And does that even matter? I mean, just because these teams have guys from Japan, does that mean that he's definitely going to sign with a team that has guys from Japan? I don't know. I mean, if it was me and I was working for, say I was doing play-by-play and it was for a team in Japan and it was like, hey, 3 teams wanted me and one of the teams had a few Americans on it, it would probably make it a little more comfortable for me just because I would kind of go in having an idea that, you know, there's a few dudes on here that I would already have something in common with, but it wouldn't necessarily be the be all end all, right? I mean, there's a fit, you know, who's in position to win, you know, and all that stuff. The Cubs are seen as a team that's in this mix, right? But they're not the favorites. The West Coast teams are just an easier fit because it's a long flight to Japan. And it's just, 3 hours, 2 hours quicker to get home if you're there. And there's a lot of, a lot more direct flight options. But look, we know that Chicago is an awesome place, right? Ask Shota. He'll tell you, right? Ask Seiya. He'll tell you too. Ask Yu Darvish. He doesn't even play for the Cubs anymore. He'll tell you the same thing. Like, there's something special about Wrigley Field and the Cubs. And I think they're in the mix. Well, there's stories coming out now that Bruce Levine, who we've known for years, like him, he works with Marquee, he works with, I think, CBS Radio, 670 The Score. Anyway, he reported that it was that this meeting was going to happen last Friday, and apparently, like, the Cubs aren't happy about it. You know, like they didn't want this to get out, and I don't know if it's Bruce's fault or if he's just reporting what happened. Why would the Cubs care? And Bruce's job, if it is Bruce, is to report stuff like this. I mean, he's an insider, and that's what insiders do. Like, hey, guess what? This is going to happen. You go and report it. We talk a lot of Cubs here, but our main goal isn't to be the first one to the fire and report that. We kind of just give analysts, our take, on what the situation is and just kind of our perspective on that, right? Like our take on that. He's an insider that goes on and he wants to report on things that nobody else has. And he was right. Like, it was going to happen. And Joe Wolf and Roki Sasaki met with the Cubs, but they also met with like 15 teams. Now, the reason why this is significant is, and we saw this with Ohtani. Remember when Ohtani was doing this? He was going and meeting all the teams, and it was like, His camp wanted things to be really like quiet, like really silent. The reason why is that they want to feel like the agent, the player, that the team's not going to throw them under the bus. And one of the things that you guys know this, I love about the culture of Japanese baseball is the culture of respect and trust. And that's something that they instill that comes from, when they're kids playing baseball. I have a guy that's going to come on and do some shows on here that grew up around it. And he's like, look, man, if you're on the baseball team, you ride your bike to school every day. Why? Well, because you're that's one of those things that being on the team, you got to do that to just like take one more step to proving how, much you appreciate being on the team. It's like, really? It's like, yeah, so, it could matter. Now, I don't know when it's nuts and bolts, if it's going to be the decision maker or not, but those things do matter. And so if the front office is upset about it, there's two things. Either someone in Sasaki's camp was like, hey, man, what, this is out. Or it could be that Jed Hoyer, who has spent a lot of time in Japan, understands that culture and knows that it's not a good look if you're trying to get a guy like a pitcher that probably should cost you, $200 million for seven and a half. You don't want to have any of those mistakes. The weird thing to me is that Bruce works for Marquee, who is owned by the Cubs. Like, wouldn't there be like a message in there? And I mean, I know that's, maybe a little over the line, but, most of the time, and when you're kind of associated, you get word like, hey, we really wouldn't appreciate it if you did that. Maybe, they didn't realize that it was, he didn't realize it was that big a deal. Or maybe he found it from his own source, or maybe it wasn't even him and he's just reporting it. But one of those things where I'm looking at it and I'm going, man, this really could cost them, because I think for the Cubs to get Sasaki, everything's going to have to go their way. I don't think that they're not the favorites. If I'm Sasaki, Dodgers just won the World Series. They've got Yamamoto and they've got Ohtani. Ohtani's like the Babe Ruth of Japanese baseball. And then you could go play with him, and you're on the West Coast, and it's LA. And we've seen that the Dodgers will do anything to sign these guys. They'll give you a backloaded contract. They'll roll the truck up when you leave. They'll do whatever they can for you not to have to pay taxes. So, I mean, like, maybe that's where we're looking at, I don't know, but I would absolutely love to have him in the starting rotation, because when I other people tell me, hey, the rotation looks good, I disagree. I really like Javier Assad, right? And he's your fifth guy, but he wasn't throwing more than 4 innings in a lot of his starts, right? He may be better as your 6th or 7th starter. They got Boyd from Cleveland. I don't know, man. I mean, not blown away by him. I wasn't blown away by Hendricks last year, even though I love the guy. And then the top of your rotation, Steele seems to be hurt a lot. Obviously Shota was great last year. Is he going to be able to duplicate that? Major League Baseball seems to have a way of figuring guys out, right? And then Jameson Tyone, bad year, good year, where's he going to fall, right? So I'm not looking at this rotation, and I'm not looking at Lester and Arrieta and a younger Hendricks and, Lester. I mean, I'm just not, man. I'm just not looking at, I said Lester. Lackey, I'm not looking at this and going, Travis, I don't see that. Like, I don't see a World Series champion rotation right now. So you add him in there, and all of a sudden you're like, hey, man, we get him, we go out and make a blockbuster deal. We get another like ace. And now all of a sudden you're going, man, we got a really good rotation, and slide Assad back as like your 6th or 7th guy coming out of the bullpen. You can use him. That's what you want, right? Who knows what's going to happen with Wicks or Brown? I'm seeing Brown's kind of getting healthy again. So, but I think you got to have a lot of competitions, and you don't want a bunch of question marks in that rotation. And so Sasaki, getting him would be huge. All right, second thing I wanted to get into, I'm going to give you my honest take on Brennen Davis. Saw Brennen Davis play. Everybody kept telling me like what a huge prospect he was. And as much as I liked him as a guy, and I think he's a fantastic person, he's a smart guy, his game was just not one to me that ever translated into major league stardom. I never saw it. I know he was at the top of the prospect list, but a lot of times these prospect lists are made up of guys that the organization wants to be the top prospect. Like they're talking to the people that are making the evaluations like, hey, he's our guy. You know, we drafted him in the first round or the second round, or we put a lot of money into this guy, or we think this. You see when the Javi Baez's or the Kyle Schwarbers or the Chris Bryants or the Pete Crow Armstrongs come through, you see it, right? Owen Casey, put him in that mix. They just do something that you're like, okay, Owen Casey, when the ball hits the barrel of the bat, and he does that a lot, it goes, right? Pete Crow Armstrong, his ability to run the bases, to play center field, his quick hands and wrist movement to the ball, it pops off the page. I just never saw it with Brennen Davis. Like I thought he was a decent outfielder. I didn't think he was superb. I thought that he had some power. He'd go to the Futures game and hit a couple of home runs, but then at the end of the season, he'd be around the 14 or 15 home run mix. And then the other thing was like last year when you start to see it going, he had terrible luck too. You know, like he finally, like you're watching spring training. I was out there. He did something, you know, Iowa, he did something, and then he would get hurt, you know? So maybe if he stays healthy, he's able to kind of prolong that over the course of, you know, of a month or two, you know, maybe he's up there, but I just have never been enamored by him. And I've been with the Cubs a long time. You know, they've tried to sell me on, you know, guys like Felix PA, and I'm watching it and I'm like, I don't see it. You know, guys I like as people, you know, Josh Vitters and Brett Jackson. I like those guys, but it just didn't look like Chris Bryant and Javi Baez. You know, the front offices will tell you that they like certain guys, but you got to go out there and translate that into success on the big league level. Now, with all of that said, with all of these guys, I'm always pulling for them. You know, just because I want to see the Cubs draft the best players. I want to see those guys have success. I hope Brennen Davis goes to the Yankees and kills it. Me personally, though, he was just never a guy that I looked at and thought, hey, this is the next big thing. Just my opinion, you know, and we'll see what happens. But I hope I'm wrong. That would be great. Now, the last thing I wanted to get into today, and I love reading stuff like this. You know, when I'm scanning Cubs on Sports Illustrated and Bleacher Nation and, you know, and definitely Cubs SI, you know, all Cubs Insider. I like all of that stuff, right? I mean, like constantly, hey, what are we doing here? You know, like, what are we talking about? What's going on? And Cubs on Sports Illustrated put out this story. It's so funny. Anonymous agent takes shots at Cubs offseason with sarcastic comment. And our friend Jesse Rogers was the guy that, like, you know, that talked about the comment. And it was basically, you know, talking about the Cubs lack of spending, right? Like the comment was like, you know, yeah, I mean, we're really excited about this offseason. You know, kind of, I feel like it's almost like I want to put a laugh out loud in this. I guess this is the Cubs version of going all in. And of course, Jesse Rogers with ESPN, and he's great. He's been on our channel before. Listen, agent, if you're the Cubs, you don't have to just go out and spend all your money to go all in. I'm not down for just throwing money at problems. I mean, think about it a few years ago when the Cubs, you know, went all in on the free agency, and they get to go sign Ian Happ, and they give him a no trade clause to play left field. And now you know, you're stuck with him in left field, and you got all these outfielders. And really the easiest thing to do for the team's success would be to move him and put somebody else there. Monetarily, it would make sense. And production wise, I don't think you'd lose a lot. I'm not to say he's been bad, but I'm just saying, like, you know, paying that much money for a left fielder doesn't make sense. Or Dansby Swanson. You went out and paid all that money for Dansby Swanson. And you got a guy that right now you're looking at and going, man, this dude's batting eighth. You know, he's not that good. Like, he can't hit, and he better hit. And I'm hoping that he does. I heard that the core injury that he got surgery on was a hernia. You know, he had the knee injury that he missed time with during the major league season. I'm pulling for Lieutenant Dan. Don't get me wrong, man. He's around. Nobody's picking up that contract. You're not trading him. So the best thing for us is that he goes out there and takes care of business. Throwing money at problems isn't the answer. And I've heard reports where they're saying, well, don't expect the Cubs to spend any money until after, the next, agreement between the players and the team owners, and all that stuff, whatever that contract's called. And I don't know that that's true. I mean, I think that if Kyle Tucker comes in and he just absolutely kills it, I can't imagine that they're not going to really seriously want to sign him. They were in the mix for Ohtani a couple of years ago. You're looking for that guy that can come in and make a difference. So I'm not counting him out. I'm not counting them out. All I'm saying is that when you look at where they are right now, an agent takes a shot at the Cubs for going all in, and it means that they're not out there, trying to bid on Juan Soto. Maybe they didn't feel like Juan Soto was the guy that they wanted. Maybe they don't want to pay Corbin Burns, all this money, because what if he gets hurt? I don't know. I mean, and he's also he's older. Maybe you can get the same deal done for a trade and then you sign a guy like Lopez if you get a deal done with the Twins. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what the answer is, but it'd be like, it'd be like going to a butcher shop and the butcher, like, you don't want to buy any of this beef? Well, maybe I don't. Maybe I'm a vegetarian. I don't know. What I do know is that it takes stars to win the World Series. And that's what I agree with on the agent. Like, you have to have them. And you go back, last year, the Dodgers, superstar lated team. Year before that, the Rangers, a lot of star players on that team, and the manager too, right? Astros, Braves. I mean, you can go down the line, and those teams are stacked. Even the 2016 Cubs were stacked full of stars that year. So it takes stars to win. I get that. We'll see when it's all said and done. My feeling is, the front office leaks that, it's because they're waiting on the next contract to get done between the players and the owners. And to me, it feels more like, hey, I'm not letting these guys spend any more of my money until I know that I'm keeping them long term. And I've said that from the beginning, because just think about the business aspect of this. You can't have a front office go out and make a bunch of signings and then you get rid of them, and they're all on they're all on 1-year contract, your main guy. So you're going to clean house. If you go out there and they don't get it done this year, you don't want to be stuck with a bunch of contracts. And I hope that Jed gets it done. This isn't an indictment of him. It's simple business. I mean, that's like that in any business. I mean, if you got somebody running it and they haven't done the job well, and then all of a sudden, like, you're going into the last year of that contract, you got to see if they're going to get it done or not. And if you were so sure about them, you'd give them an extension. So I think it's more to that. I think if Kyle Tucker has the kind of year that he's capable of having, he proves he can hit it Wrigley, you're going to need that star power. Fans love him. I wouldn't be surprised if he's not signed long term. All right, guys. Thank you for hanging out on the channel again. I hope you had a great Christmas. We're back again. I told you we would be. We're going to be here with you. We're doing this. I'm even going on vacation, and I'm still going to pop on here and do shows for you guys, because you deserve it. And as long as you watch them, I told you this, as long as you watch them, I'm going to keep putting them out through the holidays. So thank you. Go Cubs. Get in the comments section. Love the comments, man. Appreciate you guys so much. And I love you. I mean that from the bottom of my heart. This is our spot to sit around and talk about the Cubs. So appreciate it. And I will talk to you guys again tomorrow. Go Cubs.